Hello and happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday, one and all.
I hope you're all getting excited about the final day of the Premier League today, if you're listening Sunday morning.
It's a big moment.
It is, isn't it?
It's a big moment.
It is. Sadly, Liverpool won't be in the toss-up, but anyway. Welcome to the Two Mats question and answer episode brought to you by the New European.
The New European.
Should we go straight in?
Yes. Should we believe Keir Starmer's pledge card, asks Anna L. from Manchester. Thanks, Anna.
Well, I think we can believe it, that he means it. I would question kind of how much you can hold him to anything on it, because it's slightly amorphous and vague, isn't it?
Well, it's very amorphous and vague. I mean, you're not even allowed to call it a pledge card, I gather.
Pledge is old-fashioned, isn't it?
Yeah,
As Chris Mason said, try saying, I pledge to take the bins out, and you'll realise how hollow it is.
But I think Labour have actually briefed that we shouldn't call it a pledge card.
Dear.
I'm not sure what we should call it. And to be honest with you, I don't really care. What were it was deliver economic stability, cut NHS waiting times, launch a new border security command, set up Great British Energy, crack down on antisocial behaviour, and to recruit 6,500 teachers. Now, look, all of these are bromides, platitudes, and I think in answer to Anna's question, I don't think Starmer's a liar, right?
Yeah,
I really don't.
Although lots of people would say he said loads of things that he's
this is the left's objection is that he should have just carried on with the program he had in
under Corbyn.
In March 2020, irrespective of the fact that there'd been a massive pandemic, an invasion of Ukraine, which had sent the fuel prices spiralling, and Liz Truss's, tanking of the economy. So I'm a bit more sympathetic to Starmer shifting his ground. And also I'm a bit more sympathetic to him because I think, you are really naive if you think that any politician ever, including the ones that the left like, doesn't shift when they move from how they're going to win the leadership to how they're going to win a general election.
Right.
So this is a silliness that.
Yes.
I don't think Starmer's a liar. I think he's a decent, honest man. Whether this turns him into a good prime minister if he gets elected, I don't know. Yeah. But I don't think he's a liar. However, to Anna's point, should we believe? It's a good question. And I think, unfortunately, we're now in a position where skepticism is justified. We've talked about it before. It's the wages of populism and post-truth, and people are starting from ground zero on trust. And I think that this is one of the big problems Starmer has got if he becomes prime minister, is that it's the only thing that's going to matter is show, not tell. I mean, tell by all means, but you've got to show.
That's right.
The boosterism of the Tory years. Boris Johnson saying the test and trace program during COVID was world leading when it was a disaster.
Yes,
that has to go, and it's already gone. And so, I get that as one of the punctuation marks on the way to polling day, Starmer felt he had to wheel out a few pledges. Fine, but the key is, it's a basic point. The key is delivery. And that's it.
I'm not a massive fan of these kind of, the Ed Stone and the
moments. They've become part of the grammar of political campaigning, and the logic which strategists insist works. Is that politicians have to occasionally, especially opposition politicians, have to sort of poke their heads above the water and answer those voters who say they don't stand for anything.
Yes.
Now you could counter that and say what they're proposing here is so vague that it doesn't really.
I mean, there was a sprinkling of specifics in the number of the teachers and stuff.
Yeah, that's
but
good.
no time scale.
And they're promised that in the course of the Parliament. Yeah. That's the deal.
Yeah.
I think this is something not to get too excited about on either side of things.
Yeah.
But as with Sunak's speech last week, clearly the starter's pistol for the campaign has been fired, hasn't it?
If you reckon there's an election, late October, November, something like this,
yeah.
When do you reckon we'd start to see manifestos?
Well, that's a very good question, because they sometimes keep them quite close to their chest. And I mean, not necessarily that soon, because they can have short campaigns
Could
as
be
well.
Like 6 weeks, couldn't it?
And, there have been even shorter campaigns. So, I mean, I know that the manifesto is now, the Labour manifesto is now, in theory, locked and ready.
Yeah.
Whether that, I'm sure it's subject to change.
I'm sure it would. Well, they'd be foolish not to have that capacity. But that'll be an interesting moment when we see
it really will.
Stuff laid out in detail.
It really will. And I mean, I hope that I hope it is a really. It doesn't have to be long, but I hope it is a really bold document. I'm not, holding my breath, but I hope it is.
Great. Next question, please. Thank you, Anna, for that one. From Simon Tomes. Given the rise of populist states in the EU, how likely will Article 7 become the thing that defines the 2030s?
It's a good question.
It's a great question, and you have to know what Article 7 is.
Well, as I understand it, and you're the founder of the New European,
do you want me to tell you what it is?
It's about suspension, isn't it?
Well, it's basically about
Human
the
rights.
EU's right to kick states out if they defy fundamental values of the EU.
Yeah.
So,
which really means Hungary, doesn't it?
Well, I mean,
And
I think
Poland.
what Simon's saying is if could the EU accommodate an authoritarian dictatorship, of sorts? Could the EU accommodate a state that was defying the EU's economic policies? Could it accommodate a state that was breaching the core values of freedom and of movement and work, etc., etc.? And I think it's a fascinating question because the tension within Europe now is such that it's going to either have to or it's going to have to reconsider what it is, I think.
So Poland is no longer in the danger zone under fresh management. Hungary is not under fresh management. And as I understand it, I mean, there are various phases, as I understand it, with Article 7. Yeah. And Hungary, again, was given the warning, the yellow card, so to speak, over its threat to withhold money from Ukraine.
Yeah.
But I think the way you framed it's better in the sense that clearly we've got elections coming up on June the 7th, I think, in European Parliament elections, and seems to be a general sense that the right will make gains.
Yeah.
And there seems to be a general sense, too, that the right is on the march in Europe again, which means, to Simon's original question, that Article 7 suddenly stops being a kind of, reserved right that you don't really ever expect to invoke to something that may well be a very live issue. I mean, I hope it isn't, but it could well be, couldn't it?
Well, it touches, I mean, if you take it a step further to its logical conclusion, it does address an existential threat to the European Union, which is, what is it? What is the European Union for? Is it something that's going to develop into a federation of European states, all with common foreign policies, economies, all the dream of many hardcore Europhiles? Or is it going to be a much looser trading thing, maybe going back to how it started, with the EEC? And I don't know the answer, but I do think that we've reached a point where a scrutiny of what the European Union is for and who it represents and what its goals are would be really welcome, and it might even include a route back in for meaningful participation from the UK.
We've been discussing this. I mean, the one of the things that I think will actually sort of dictate the form that Britain's future relationship with Europe takes in the years to come will not be looking backwards to Brexit, but the new role Europe is going to have to play in this very, very unstable geopolitical climate.
Yes.
With an America that whoever becomes president or stays president in November, it doesn't want to be the policeman to the world anymore. It doesn't. And so, just on defence, the EU has got to have a sense of its goals, identity, values. But that means, to your point, that it can't have rogue members. And I do think, Orban, I increasingly feel, is in some respects, the most interesting leader in the world, because Trump loves him. Putin loves him. Zelensky almost hit him. He is the person that is trying to build an illiberal democracy.
Yes,
and there is a market for that in the world. It would be idle to deny it. So we watch that with great care, and I hope he is kept on manners. I really do.
And another relevant case study right now is Georgia, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
Georgia's got European Union candidacy state.
Yep.
Much of Georgian population wants to be a member of the European Union. Much of the government wants it to be much closer to Russia. They've started baking into their law these bizarre laws about ownership of foreign interest, and where if your company has, I think it's more than 20% of investment from a foreign entity, that you're declared an agent of foreign interest. Very creepy, sinister stuff.
Yep.
That is a absolute casebook tactic used by Putin and Lukashenko in Belarus as well, to clamp down on the freedom of the press and to control companies' activities, etc. So they are the tensions at play, and it makes what's going on in Ukraine so absolutely vital.
Yes.
That I think we're going to look back in 20 years' time and look at Ukraine as a real defining moment in the future of Europe, not just the European Union, but the future of what Europe actually constitutes and means. It's so important that
it
Ukraine
is.
prevails.
And I fear that America is losing interest in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah.
And I mean, if Trump wins, then the support will go immediately.
Yeah.
But even Biden, I think, he's willing to try and reorder the Middle East. But I think there is a general feeling, and you saw this in the difficulty in getting the money to Ukraine through Congress. And it's not just Republicans. That why are we funding this war? Now, you and I probably agree that it's right that they are, but how long will they?
Yeah. I had a thought the other day about, someone said at a conference, well, at the end of the Cold War, and it just suddenly flickered in my head. I said, well, did the Cold War ever actually end? Did we win a battle in 1989, but did the war continue rumbling on in other ways, that are now manifesting themselves?
Yes, I mean, there's that wonderful George Smiley line, which is the right side lost, but the wrong side won, which is, it's carried on, and it's kind of metastasized and mutated into something, in some respects, scarier.
Yes.
Because it's fractal. It exists in all sorts of different dimensions.
It's taken on all the extra dimensions that modern life has brought in the last 20,
exactly.
30 years.
It isn't just this battle between two blocks with a wall down the middle. It really isn't.
No. All right. Fascinating question, Simon.
Great question.
Thank you for emailing that in. Next question, please. In last week's Q&A, there were comments about low turnout in local elections. What are the Terence Legend and the Diplomat's thoughts on
Terence Legend, I think. This refers.
Sorry.
Terence Legend is a well-known playwright. Terence Legend.
Is he?
No. I think these are new nicknames for us. Although anyone who calls me the Diplomat hasn't met me.
Been really thick those. What are the Terence Legend? Is that me?
I think that's you.
And the Diplomat, is that you?
It's obviously, very sweet of you, Larry.
Irony. What are the Terence Legend and the Diplomat's thoughts on compulsory voting? I'm fully behind it. Larry from Coventry, PUSB. What does that mean?
I don't know, but I'm sure
Full of mystery.
It's an international man of mystery. But
yeah.
Look,
compulsory voting. What do you think?
Well, the argument in favour is a sort of consequentialist one, which is the poor, the young, renters, non-graduates, ethnic minorities are all less likely to vote. Ergo, the representative bodies we end up with are not as representative as they should be, and they are unrepresentative of the people who need the state most, typically. So that's a kind of that's the way it works. And there are I think 14 or 15 places where it is in place. Belgium and Australia, I guess, are the two that would most be our kind of models. And the idea is it increases political participation, and it makes voting more like doing jury service than just a political action. And crucially, it turns a right into a duty, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm still not quite persuaded.
Yeah.
Because the penalties in the places where it's in place are not huge. I mean, in Australia you get a fine, I think, and in Brazil is the one I noted where if you don't vote, you can't take professional exams or get a loan or a passport, and that seems to me
a bit
heavy. But actually, I do think not voting, there's a big difference between a right and a duty. They really are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And this is the argument against compelled speech versus free speech, which is they are totally different things.
Yeah.
And I completely get where the compulsory voting lobby want to get, and it's a good idea. I'm just not sure that forcing people to the ballot box
I don't like it.
really will actually make a richer and more kind of engaged democracy. I don't see it.
A proportion of people who don't vote are in effect abstaining.
Yes.
And that's a conscious
and a
decision
right.
and a right. So, maybe you could force them to tick a box saying none of the above. Okay, fine. But a proportion of the people who don't vote are doing so because they don't feel that the vote will change their lives or that it's relevant to them. And that, to me, that's the problem that this is trying to address.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Compulsory voting isn't necessarily the answer. Educating and communicating and getting across to people at a grassroots level why they absolutely have to vote because it's in their self-interest. That's the answer.
Putting the cart before the horse.
Yes,
really,
exactly.
Which is it's rather letting politicians off the hook, which is your job is to persuade voters that it's worth voting.
Yes.
Now, a compulsory voter advocate would say, yeah, but the problem is if you don't have compulsory voting, the politicians you get don't care.
As a Terrace legend, let me make a football
Speaking
analogy.
as a Terence.
I can remember going to watch with my dad, who is an Evertonian, going to watch Goodison Park in the 80s. Late 70s, early 80s, when Everton were playing terrible football and sitting in an empty stadium, almost outnumbered by stewards and coppers, right? And the answer wasn't to make attendance compulsory for Everton. The answer was to play better football.
That's actually a very good analogy.
To entertain and to play better football and to give people what they want so they're engaged. And that's what politics is failing to do, We've had 14 years of absolute car crash politics, and people are bored and apathetic and tired of it all. And something's got to change. I don't think dragging people to a ballot box is going to do it.
And another sort of local point is that probably in the next 20, 30 years, there's going to have to be quite a lot more compulsion in terms of climate, in terms of higher taxes. I'm not sure adding voting to that list is necessarily a good idea.
Just on a slight tangent, what about referendums? I mean, putting to one side, if one can, the Brexit referendum, do you think there's a place for referendums in representative democracies like ours?
Yeah, but I think we have demonstrated at this point of destruction that they are not they're, to put it mildly, a pretty sort of indelicate instrument, shall we say, right? I mean, you have to have them for big constitutional changes, but the problem always is, and it was in the Brexit case, is what's the question?
Yes. Yeah.
Because if the question had been, which is what I suggested at the time, next time there's a EU treaty, should there be a referendum? Which, after all, is what it happens in France, and we'd still be in the EU, and
for sure.
No problem.
If we had a system that somehow, and I don't know what the answer is, but you can start to think about concrete measures that might help this. But if we somehow had a system that accepted and understood the reality, which is that people are going to lie through their teeth around that question, and there were countermeasures to inform people, not just that bloody leaflet that was sent round. Do you remember?
Sure.
Something that made a positive impact, then yes, I think they can work. But I think asking people questions in today's environment where people are willing and able to lie barefacedly to suit their agendas is just asking for trouble, isn't it?
Yes, and I mean, let's be honest, the media did not rise to the occasion.
No, we let everybody down.
We really didn't. And so, if there are to be more referendums, then I actually rather doubt there will be many. No. But although, having said that, here's a dystopia for you. Let's say Starmer only wins by a small majority and serves only one term, and then a sort of reinvented Conservative Reform Alliance comes in. There'd be a referendum on net zero.
Would there, do you think?
Oh, well, I mean, it's Farage has already got a group up and running to campaign for it.
Really?
So it would be, I would think, a condition of any alliance or merger.
would the question be, do you want the planet to burn to a cinder?
I somehow think it would be
years?
more, would you like still to be able to drive, a very, very, very nice Jag?
Do you want to be forced to spend £40,000 on a pathetic electric car that will only go 150 miles? Or not?
Or not, Do you really like this pathetic electric vehicle, or would you like to drive this really cool car,
Maybe they could have Jeremy Clarkson asking the question.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Larry, for your question. This podcast, The Two Mats, is sponsored as ever by the New European newspaper. And we've got a very special subscription offer for you, a new one, where you can get a free Bollocks to Brexit passport cover. That's right, you heard that right, folks. It's a absolutely top quality burgundy, like vegan leather, beautifully designed passport cover. Pleather. That's what they call it, isn't it? Pleather. To hide your new British blue.
The shame of the blue.
The shame of the blue passport. And you can get your free Bollocks to Brexit passport cover free and it's worth £25, by the way, free with a subscription to the New European from just £1 a week. And for £1 a week, you get all of our digital content, including the new app, which we've just spent an absolute fortune redesigning and is really, really superb now. And
the least you can do is subscribe.
The least you can do is help us pay for that. Or for an extra £1 a week, if you like getting the newspaper delivered to your door, which I do very much.
Me too.
Every week we will send you first class post our award-winning newspaper, The New European, and that will be a saving of more than 75% on the retail price. So to take this fantastic offer, and trust me, if you like this podcast, you will absolutely love The New European, go to theneweuropean.co.uk/2mats. That's the number 2, MATTS, and there's a link in the show notes. Next question, please.
Is it not possible that Keir Starmer's acceptance of the Elphicke defection, this is Natalie Elphicke, who was a Tory MP and is now sitting as a Labour MP, is smarter than you allow? We both said, it is in brackets, Matt and I both said that it was not a good idea. Continuing the question, by accepting Elphicke, Keir Starmer is saying to those voters who have maybe just drunk the Tory Kool-Aid that they are welcome to vote Labour, from Roy Pearce. Thank you, Roy.
Well, I mean, yes, of course. I think Roy's absolutely right. That must be the thinking behind it, which is...
It is, yeah.
And also somebody said on the radio, if it was any other MP other than the member for Dover, then, who has suddenly given him the ammo to say, well, if even the member for Dover thinks the Tories Stop the Boats campaign is useless, then clearly we've got a better plan. So there's the thinking. Whether you think it's smart or not, I don't know. But I do think, as Neil Kinnock said, even the broadest church has walls.
Limits, yeah, exactly.
And I do think it does still say something about the willingness to be broader beyond your actual values, just for the sake of electoral success.
I think that's right. I mean, I think Roy's makes a good general point, which is that obviously a successful party on the verge of power wants to make as many people feel welcome as it possibly can. And certainly, the more Tory voters that can be made to feel that the Tory party is a butted flush and they should vote Labour, the better. But I felt that the problem was more to do with Starmer than Elphicke, which is that he is specifically vulnerable on the idea that he will do and say anything. And this is what is going to be thrown at him. I mean, Sunak in his speech last week actually referred to this specifically, that he'd gone from supporting Corbyn into elections to embracing Natalie Elphicke. And I think that that's the kind of dangerous charge that can get doorstep traction, which is, this guy's just a hollow vessel, he'll do and say anything. They tried it with Blair in 97, didn't work. But I think Starmer just has to be a bit careful with it. I'm not saying he has to sing the red flag. I think that he's absolutely right to have relocated the party in the centre ground and to present himself as a decent, sensible man who wants to restore sanity to, this troubled country. I think that he needs to be just a bit careful who he allows onto the boat. So, for example, He's now taking advice from Andrew Cooper, a very, very liberal Tory pollster who, advised Cameron, and that's fine, no problem there. And, there are other people from Tory land who've moved into his orbit, and no problem. And that's good. But Natalie Elphicke, I'm not sure she was a great acquisition.
I also think if the calculus is a cynical one about appealing to red wall voters who voted for the Tories last time, appealing for people who are very affected and excited about the Stop the Boats campaign, they've also got to balance that against the fact that they have severely wound up old Corbynistas, because the argument that's been battered back to and fro is, how can you allow Natalie Elphicke in within a week, and Diane Abbott and Jeremy Corbyn have both been kicked out? How can you say they've both been MPs for 40 years?
I mean, my feeling is slightly more brutal, which is that, I mean, I think it's fair in terms of natural,
but I understand
natural justice. The treatment of Diane Abbott is outrageous. Right? Yes, she should have had a decision by now. I actually think that, in general, the more Starmer is seen by the electorate to be bashing Jeremy Corbyn, at least, the better. Yeah, I think that he needs to do that, and the left, they can do what they want. They can all go off to the Greens and form their own party.
And our colleague Paul Mason,
very excitingly,
bravely standing for election. So I don't know whether this is a positive or a negative, but I think he'd make an excellent.
I think Paul will be a terrific MP. I really do. I think he's
very strong on defence, very socially literate, aware, makes
tremendous integrity,
and writes folks brilliant columns, as do you, Matt, in the New European every week.
Called the New European.
No, I'm being serious. I mean,
Mason is one of the greats, and also, and I'm not sure if he'll thank me for this is not a secret, but reminding the world, he's a big Wagner freak.
He is, yes.
He and I meet occasionally at these strange hooded.
Yeah, he is. He wrote a big piece about Wagner,
and he knows a lot about it.
And do you know the best thing about it? He's hated by all the right people. If you go on Twitter and see all the weirdos who are just taking glee in Paul Mason standing against Jeremy Corbyn.
Mason's a proper socialist. He's someone who wants to see a better world for people who don't have power and don't have a fair shake.
He's really wound up all the school ground bullies on Twitter.
He's a proper left-wing person.
Good. Anyway, so Paul's got our vote. Thank you, Roy, for your question. Next question, please. Given that I can do all my government business, tax, passport, etc., online, why is no one proposing online voting? It would energise the young, widen the franchise, and be cheaper. A gift for Labour. Thank you, Neil.
Well, it's a good question, isn't it?
Why can't you just vote on an app these days?
You could, I suppose. I mean,
I've got an NHS app.
Yes, me too. Yeah,
which is obviously secure enough where it tells me all of my multiple medications to keep me sane.
I mean, look, all electoral systems, as Mr. Trump constantly reminds us, are subject to interference. But I really don't believe that online voting would be any more subject to interference than postal voting or proxy voting. So I think it's a good idea, and I actually think that it kind of squares the circle of the compulsory voting question, because it would amount to not compulsory voting, but actually, if young people could vote on their phones, they would vote.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
And also, you could do it, you could get the results much, much quicker.
Yes. But can you also, and can you imagine, because they just think it was likes.
Yeah.
So, Derek likes Keir Starmer.
With sorts of hearts fluttering up through the screen.
Right.
But that's how it could be presented on telly.
Basically, the whole of democracy.
You could have Starmer's head and Sunak's
head.
Will
migrate to TikTok.
You could have Starmer's head and Sunak's head on the screen.
They'll be singing sea shanties and doing fun little dances and pouring ice over their heads, right? And there'll be millions of 18 to 21-year-olds with their fingers hovering over heart or,
Or the poo emoji. Yeah.
Anna does not like Rishi, I mean, I think this is the future, Neil.
I think this could be it. And we could all do it on a Saturday night after the Anton Deck. Anton Deck don't do it anymore. So we could do it after Britain's Got Talent. We could have Britain's Got Britain's Got Politics.
Brishy, it might be you. I mean, the other thing, just as a small, tiny, weeny counterpoint, is that it would be instantly hacked by the Russians and the Chinese and everyone else. So I think, if we accept this, we also have to accept that we will soon be a province of China.
And the new Prime Minister is Leonid
Xi Jinping. That's a surprise, folks, isn't it?
Wow.
Can you imagine Laura Kuenssberg on election night saying, well, we certainly weren't expecting that. Congratulations to the great leader Xi.
Right. Thank you, Neil, for giving us a laugh.
After the dreadful story of the fake charity plumber, it occurs to me that we are entering an age of total deception. How will we combat lies and liars in the future? From Jane Clinton and Guildford. Matt.
Well, so this is I can't remember the guy's name now, but he set up this...
James Anderson, wasn't it?
James Anderson, and he set up he had a community... It was quite an interesting business setup where there was an obligation for the business to be actively involved in helping the community. And
that's right,
got him some tax breaks maybe or something like this. But according to the BBC investigation, he's been abusing that massively. And
it was called DEFA.
DEFA, D-E-F-A-O.
The PH.
Sorry.
Weirdly, in Burnley.
Right. And
he posted lots of pictures.
And he was sort of faking stories about good deeds he's done, including a weirdly sinister one about saving an old woman from suicide.
That's right.
And using a photo that he'd also used previously of the same woman with a totally different context about it. And according to the story, he's bought himself a house and he's bought himself a car and all. So I mean, it's one of those bloody things where you think, oh Christ, I thought the world was a little bit nicer than it actually turns out to be. But the broader point Jane asks is, I think we are entering an age of total deception. It's a very good description.
I think so. And I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, I don't think people have got more evil. I think it's just that the capacity to lie and to cheat and to swindle and be a charlatan has kind of exploded, largely down to digital technology. And I think that the truth is, and it's a very sad thing, is that we have to start from a basis of almost zero trust. And you have to assume that almost anything could be a lie, even if it appears to be an honest and decent offer of well-meant help. And I think about this a lot because it seems to me that a lot of things converge at this point, which is we need, as we head into the second half of the 2020s, we need new watchdogs, new regulatory systems, new equivalents of nutrition labelling that have real teeth, and aren't just sort of mild-mannered box tickers. And I mean, one thing that I proposed years and years ago and didn't get anywhere, but was if you put a £5 on every annual subscription to a phone.
Yes.
There are 80 million of them in this country. You'd raise 400 million quid.
Yes.
You could get quite a lot of regulatory muscle out of that.
Yeah.
You probably need more, and you'd probably have to get the Treasury to match it.
Yeah.
But
you could start.
You could start. And I think that actually it would be a small levy, a sort of trust levy, if you like, would be not such a bad idea.
It's very interesting. There was a point made at the Sir Harry Evans Journalism Summit.
Oh, yeah, I think we went to last Wednesday.
And it was about somebody saying the flip side to the lies, which is almost even more disturbing, is the complete deniability everyone will have in the future. So next time someone's entrapped in some scandal where they're overheard saying something racist or whatever, actually brilliantly prescient of Andrew O'Hagan in his book Caledonian Road, which we've both read, where I won't spoil it, but one of the key characters towards the end, they deny something that's happened, just be saying, no, it's faked. It's faked.
It's fake.
It's faked. It's a deep fake. It wasn't me. I didn't say it. They faked my voice. At the conference, they were saying that, right now you can digitally analyze a photograph, and you can, if you're clever enough, you can see where things have been changed as the Princess of Wales knows very well, or even using Google reverse image search, you can tell if images have been altered, but you can't tell. There's no way of telling if a voice has been concocted out of any public speaker who's been recorded as we're talking now, right?
Yeah.
So in the future, people could take, God help them, but they could take the two Matts back catalogue, stick it through a DeepMind machine, and get it to say anything. Anything.
As I understand it, the amount of content you need now is very low.
Yes.
So it used to be you needed hours and hours and hours of us talking, right? It would now be probably one episode would do it.
So imagine say your son is deep faked. Phones you up, says,
that's the classic.
Can you send us 50 quid?
Yes.
Just remind me I want to send you 50 quid. What are your bank details?
It's terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying.
It is terrifying. I mean, and there was that incredibly realistic deep fake of Sadiq Khan during the campaign. Which I know from talking to people in the campaign, they got through it. They handled it very well and got on top of it very quickly. But it was a big speed bump in the road for them, because I don't think anyone was ready for the apparent authenticity of this. And it obviously this is going to happen more and more and more and more and more. And I mean, you hear this a lot in Techland, which is people talk about the race, which is the race between the capacity of tech to do bad and the capacity of people to get on top of it. And of course the problem is that the capacity of tech to do bad is more lucrative.
Of course it is.
The capacity of tech to regulate, suppress naughty stuff is there are customers, but they're governments and things like or
slow to move agencies.
They're not villains and gangsters and
organised crime,
and so it is. There is no glib answer to this one, but I think sadly Jane is right to start from that proposition.
And you can bet your life that those wankers who phone up and pretend to be from Lloyd's Bank and want your password, that the people who are making those profits from their criminal behaviour are investing that profit into
straight back into
how can we make AI automate this.
Yes, and I mean the other thing to bear in mind, and one of the reasons that Trump won in 2016 is that actually bad tech is cheap. Troll farms are cheap. Campaigning on the ground and TV advertising is expensive,
and time-consuming.
But digital lies are very, very inexpensive.
Bloody hell! Right, I'm being told that I'd like to wrap it up on a high note, but I think we're going to have to wrap it up on a depressing note this morning.
Do we not run out of time? We don't have a jolly one.
Have we got a jolly one, producer Matt? Go on, give us one quick jolly one. Come on, we can't leave people hang. It's Sunday morning, for Christ's sake. They're going to look forward to the football this afternoon. Don't leave them.
Dogs will be kicked. Children will be neglected.
Nervous wrecks will be walking through the streets of robots. London. Okay, come on. Wait, Matt. I think he's relented. Oh yes, he has found
one.
He has found a question against his better nature
behind his little sofa,
and it's an amusement. Here we go.
Here it is.
And it's from Jay and Chiswick. Do the Matts think rainbow lanyards should be banned from the civil service? What do you think, Matt?
Well, we touched on this in the Friday podcast. I mean, I'm now, since then, my thoughts have hardened. I think it should be compulsory, Matt.
Compulsory LGBTQ plus lanyards.
I mean, I just think, well, first of all, they're very appealing. They brighten up your day, right? If you're not of the view that there should be equality with the LGBTQ community, then you're obviously a bad person.
Yes,
and you don't believe in the Human Rights Act of 2010.
Esther McVeigh.
And also, well, to your point, the fact that Esther McVeigh wants people not to wear them is a pretty compelling argument for me that people should wear them.
Absolutely.
I start every day. One of my little mantras
is what wouldn't Esther do?
What wouldn't Esther McVeigh do, right? So, which is And one of them is, in fact, I'm slightly ashamed that I'm not wearing a rainbow lanyard.
Can we start a movement of? Wouldn't it be? I mean, on an almost serious point, wouldn't it be an amazing response by the civil service if they all started wearing rainbow lanyards?
I hope they should, because the civil service get a lot of heat from this government, right? And they've been, and not for nothing, but the reason that this country is even slightly held together by blue tack and spit and glue and is since the Brexit mania is because the civil service have been doing an amazing job of just keeping,
as always,
keeping the lights on, right? So every time Rishi Sunak says we're going to sack 7,000 civil servants, knowing that they can't answer back, and Esther Bloody McVeigh says, communists in our midst wearing their rainbow lanyards.
Gay communists.
Gay communists after your children.
Enforcing their
grooming communists.
Gay communist views all
over there. Grooming communists. Right? Yeah. I mean, I think that, we are. We are all grooming communists, and we are going to wear lanyards.
Right, Britain, this is your mission. If you're a civil servant listening...
This is London calling.
Spread the word.
Spread the word. We want the whole of Britain, by the next time we do a podcast, to be wearing rainbow lanyards.
It's a real Spartacus moment for Britain's civil servants.
I am Spartacus, which of course is a name that is quite popular, I believe, in the gay community. So I think Spartacus has certain allusions in it. Anyway, we'll maybe one of our LGBTQ listeners can enlighten us on the
relevance of Spartacus,
the deeper meanings of Spartacus. But meanwhile, let's get out on the barricades with rainbow lanyards and just say no to Esther.
Exactly.
Say no.
I just say no to
Just
Esther.
say no, kids.
Fabulous. I'm so glad we got that funny one in. Thank you,
Matt.
Mr. Matt, for that. And thank you indeed to Rethink Audio as ever.
Comedy goalkeeper.
Thank you. Another one slips through, an own goal. Don't forget your wonderful subscription offer. If you like the conversations we have on the Two Mats, you're going to love getting the New European newspaper through your door every week. Or you can subscribe digitally from just £1 a week. You get that brilliant Bollocks to Brexit passport cover, which will be fantastic to show off in your longer than necessary queue through the border controls wherever you're going on holiday this summer.
Exactly.
So go to theneweuropean.co.uk/2mats, number 2 MATTS, link in the show notes, and have a wonderful Sunday.
Have a wonderful Sunday.